Welcome back to Laughing in the Dark, the podcast where I hang out in haunted places with comedians. I'm your host, Sarah Jones. For this episode, I got to look into the curious case of the Watseka Wonder with Subhah Agarwahl. Subhah has written for The Jim Jeffries Show on Comedy Central and Comedy Knockout on True TV, among others. You can see her late-night debut on NBC's A Little Late with Lily Singh. Subhah appeared on Season 3 of HBO's Westworld, on True TV's sketch comedy Friends of the People, and on MTV2, Comedy Central, and Gotham Comedy Live. If you want, check out our Instagram at Lit Dark Podcast for photos that go along with this episode. For now, please enjoy the weird and fascinating case of the Watseka Wonder. Hello.
Hey, sorry about that. Hit the wrong button.
Oh, that's totally fine. I called you 2 minutes early, so I completely understand. I was like, maybe I should wait 2 minutes. How are you?
Nice. Yeah, I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Just, hanging in there through the lockdown. It's a mess for everyone.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing, I told you about it a little bit, but so I've been doing episodes of Laughing in the Dark in lockdown, and I've been researching haunted places in the comics' home states.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you're from Illinois, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Have you heard of the small farming town Watseka?
No, say that again.
Watseka. It's Watseka.
Watseka. No, never heard of it. Does sound like an infectious disease that you would catch from a mosquito, but I've never heard of it.
It absolutely does. So it's about 85 miles south of Chicago. So are you from the Chicago area?
Yeah, I'm actually from northwest of Chicago.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's no reason why you would have ever been here. But it's a small town in Iroquois County. And our story takes place a long time ago, too. So this is kind of a cool story because I wouldn't normally be able to do this as a real episode. Like if we were actually in Illinois, there's a place we could go, but it's a really old story and it's really unique for the show because it's about possession.
Oh, wow.
So reported possessions go all the way back to the 1690s during the Salem witch trials, which I think at the time most of them were pretty much, bullshit, just like trying to get someone killed.
Yeah.
But they've still been reported. Sorry, what?
I was going to say, it's like, yeah, it was just like a woman reading. They're like, she's possessed. It wasn't.
Yeah. She's a bitch. We should definitely kill her. So normally when we think of possession, right, we tend to think about like demons and The Exorcist. This is a little bit different. This story is a kind of a different kind of possession that's actually not as evil, and it'll be kind of interesting, I think. Or I thought it was interesting. So I'm talking about... Yeah. Any story of possession I think is fascinating, but actually I find the demon possessions a lot more interesting. But this is a crazy story. So this is the mysterious case of a young Miss Laurency Venom. I know.
That's quite the fucking name.
Venom. It's Vennum, but it's just rad. Great name. Daughter of Thomas and Lorinda Venom, Laurency was one of 7 children in a devoutly Orthodox Christian family. Though there were 7 children in the household, only 4 survived infancy, with their 5th child and 3rd daughter, Laura, dying at only 1 day old. But this is like...
Brutal. What?
This is like back in the day when you expect half your kids to die.
Got it. Like people were just throwing out babies with bathwater, like just losing kids left and right. So it wasn't too great abnormal.
This is in the 1800s and people are just popping babies out because they just need someone to help them on the farm. It's not
right.
Yeah. But the family was well respected in the community. Thomas's grandparents had been some of the first settlers in the county. His brother was the owner of the first bank set up in the town, and another brother had become a mayor in 1872. So overall, the Venom family was well-liked, enjoyed many healthy relationships in town. You know, they weren't seen as, you know, weirdos. Lorancy was the Venom's second daughter. In 1877, when Lorancy was 13 years old, things started to take a turn for the worst, and life would never be quite the same for the Venom family. At first, she became ill and began acting strangely. She would complain that she was unable to sleep and that she was feeling dizzy or nauseous. She also claimed to be having nightmares where someone was desperately calling her name in the night. And though nobody was there, she could still feel their hot breath on her face.
Oh, that's the worst.
Just creepy, right? Especially because, like, when you dream, you don't, like, feel, or I don't feel any physical thing. You can be bleeding in a dream, but you don't feel any, like, gash or anything.
Yeah. And the person calling for your help is a close talker, just breathing on you. Like, that's my real worst fear in real life, let alone a nightmare.
Oh, God. And up until now, Lorancy had never suffered from any serious illnesses, save for the measles when she was 9 years old. But sleep troubles just never ailed her before, so this was very unique. Things began to get a bit worse when Lorancy started complaining of severe stomach pains. Doubled over in pain, Lorancy would fall into trances where she would make claims that she could see spirits floating around her. Her mother recounted how Lorancy had approached her in the kitchen, telling her she felt strange, before falling dramatically and lying rigid on the kitchen floor. She'd lay there with her arms unbending and her muscles tight, appearing to be nearly dead. Then, in a trance-like state, she would calmly speak and say that she could see the dead in the room standing before them, including her dead siblings. Which just this imagery is fucking terrifying. Just horrible.
That is so creepy.
It's so creepy. And it gets worse, so don't worry. And also remember, this is like this really religious, like Orthodox Christian family. And after several hours, Lorancy would return again with little to no memory of her trance at all. Lorancy's fainting spells only became more and more intense as time went on. Oh, fuck. Sorry. I tapped my computer and it went down like 3 pages in my notes. Perfect. Okay.
Lorancy is cured. Wait a minute. That's not the story.
I'm just like, oh, I'm on a new story now. So the fainting spells only become more and more intense. She'd talk in her sleep about angels, demons, and other spirits of the dead. Sometimes she'd dream that she was running from spirits chasing her around the house, and other times she'd describe a dreamy spirit world, which she called heaven, complete with spirits that she called angels. So the family being very religious, these spells definitely alarmed them. You know, they don't think she's going through a phase or anything. They're definitely freaked out. The trances escalated even further when Lorancy would begin to speak in other people's voices, describing faraway places she had never been to and people she had never met in alarming details. But again, when she'd awake, she'd have no memory of the experience. These spells would sometimes last up to 8 hours a day. That's like a shift.
Oh, that's too much.
No.
Yeah, that's way too much. I can't.
She would even be known to speak in foreign languages or garbled speech, her personality changing completely during these spells.
Okay, I have to know if these are actual foreign languages or if this is just what her Orthodox parents assumed was French. Like, who was checking that this was a real language?
Well, it said foreign languages or garbled speech. So I think maybe either it was that. Like, they're like, I don't know if this is like fucking German or what's happening.
I just feel like it was her running around the house going, oh, and they're like, oh my God, she's speaking French. She's channeling a French woman.
Either way, like any horror movie I've seen, when someone's speaking in like tongues, it doesn't have to really be like Latin. It's like, it's creepy anyway. But then again,
this is terrifying.
It would be horrible. And then she'd wake up totally not even remember, like she thought she was asleep. Symptoms only seemed to get worse as time went on. The terrible stomach pains would strike Lorancy 5 to 6 times per day, putting her through such pain that she would contort her body unnaturally, sometimes to such an extreme that her head would be able to touch her feet. So this is like every possession exorcist movie you've ever seen. This was her experience. Eventually, mercifully, the stomach pains subsided, but the trances continued and only intensified. Which honestly, for Lorancy's sake, you're like, that's better. Rumors in town. They don't hurt. Yeah, at least you're not contorted in like some fucked up way. Rumors in town started to spread like wildfire. The townsfolk had begun suggesting that Lorancy was in fact insane and should be sent to an asylum. At this point, Lorancy suffered the trances about 12 times per day, each lasting anywhere from 1 to 8 hours at a time, and during which she would happily chat with angels, oblivious to her parents' horror and concern, but eventually she would snap out of it and return to a rational state of mind. So though many push for her to be committed to an asylum, which isn't shocking, right? Specifically, the state insane asylum in Peoria, others pushed for an expert, quote unquote, intervention to address the spirits directly. Asylums at the time had a horrific reputation, and for good reason. Often asylums would be places where lots of abuse was served to undeserving patients and little treatment was truly administered. Many patients at the time were lucky to survive the horrific treatments at asylums, let alone be cured or to thrive whatsoever. So I've actually done a few episodes of this show in the past for people who have been listening. I've done episodes at abandoned asylums, all over the place. And I always kind of go into this, like some of the treatments of asylums back in the day, and it's fucking terrifying. It's like you think the stories of possession are scary. The things that they would do to people that they thought were, insane, which is quote unquote, just like with the Salem witch trials, a lot of women were sent to insane asylums because of like hysteria, which was really like, my wife is being a bitch, like, and then murdered in the name of like mental health, which is just fucked.
So crazy.
It's horrible. It's awful. So the family tried several other interventions by medical doctors to treat the girl and avoid the asylum. One doctor named Dr. L.N. Pitwood evaluated the girl and could not diagnose her. He suggested a visit from Dr. Jewett, another modern practitioner who had treated many patients throughout the town, but he too failed to diagnose the girl. And also, like, remember, this is the 1800s, so they're just like, this is just the doctor. Like, there's not like specialties for these people. Like, they're like,
there were like 3 diagnoses. It's like she either has the vapors, a bad attitude, or insanity.
She's gotta be nuts. Like, I fix broken arms. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. Yeah. So they both suggested for her to be sent to the asylum, which is pretty much where you just send like lots of people with attention deficit disorder, like Down syndrome, any kinds of like special needed people to any level of degree at the time were always sent to asylums. And this went on for years, for decades. It's like, if you know the history of mental health in our country, it's alarming. But anyway, so they're totally like, she's a lost cause, she's nuts. Reverend B.M. Baker, the Watseka Methodist minister, was so determined to send her there that he actually chose to go behind the parents' back and write the asylum himself, trying to get her an application for admission, which is just, These poor parents, too. Like, they clearly love their kid, that they're like, that place sucks. Yeah, so finally, the family decided, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, it's super weird that a minister didn't believe the possession. Like, even he was like, I don't know. Like, right. I feel like it's so... I think that's why you don't hear about possessions from like non-religious families. Like it's always like super religious people because everyone else is just like, well, give her some Ritalin. I think she'll be okay. You know, it's never, they're the only ones that are like, this could be a demon.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, I don't know much. I was raised Catholic. And so in Catholicism, I know that that's like, you know, exorcism is a Catholic rite. Like it's like a Catholic thing. I know they were Orthodox Christian. I don't know if like
so
maybe that wasn't.
Thing.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like I'm completely ignorant. I don't know much about other religions. Honestly, don't know a whole lot about Catholicism, to be honest. But I mean, I'm not really a religious person in general. But we'll get into it a little bit of the exorcism stuff still. Because finally, this family decides it's time to bring in a renowned spiritualist doctor recommended by a fellow resident of the town. His name was Dr. E.W. Stevens of Wisconsin. Spiritualism at the time was a movement at its height. Essentially, they believed in the existence of an eternal afterlife where spirits could be contacted and conversed with through mediums, trances, and seances. Spirits were believed to always have the ability to communicate with the living, but sometimes mediums were needed for the living to allow the communications to be received. Though there was a large...
Very different than spiritualism in LA right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
When you said spiritualism, I just thought about yoga mats and scented candles. I was like, oh, does this doctor just sell, like, does he carry Gwyneth Paltrow's vagina candles? Like, what are we talking about? This is totally different.
It was, well, so spiritualism is actually really interesting because it's what we think of as like a new age hippie now, you know? Like you live in LA, I live in LA. We all know at least 5 people that have told us about the benefits of crystals. Like it just happens, you know? And who am I to say? I don't know. But so that's kind of how spiritualism was seen at the time. It was kind of new. It had just kind of taken off. And though there was a large growth of the movement at the time, there was still heavy prejudice against it, especially in small towns like Watseka, with a strict Orthodox Christian leaning, which is not difficult to imagine at all. So Stevens later wrote about his experience with this family, and it is considered the most detailed account of these events that followed. He published the book in 1887 and called it the Watseka Wonder. So if you look up this term, you'll find all the information I'm about to share with you. But yeah, this is kind of a one of the most detailed accounts of possession ever. So still plagued by her trances, Loranci would also continue to have other personalities appear to take over her body. In one trance, she claimed to be a 63-year-old German woman named Katrina. In another, she was a young man named Willie. Eventually, Loranci invited the presence of a friendlier spirit, and it was that of a girl who had died somewhere between 12 to 13 years prior, and it was the spirit of a girl named Mary Roth. Now, this is where it starts to get kind of interesting. So when Mary Roth was alive, the girl that ends up taking over Loranci's body, when she was alive, she actually experienced similar symptoms to Loranci. Her parents, Asa and Anne Roth, despite becoming devout spiritualists after her passing, also were highly respected in the community. Asa had been elected as the county sheriff in 1854 and became a lawyer in 1857. They had a first-class reputation in the town, and Asa Roth was always cheerful, despite what he had been through. In fact, a source at the time mentioned that likely no man of the time was more highly esteemed or respected in the community as Asa Roth. And that's just to show, like, this was like, these were respected people. These weren't just like, you know, alcoholics on the corner of town that they're like, yeah, this whole family's nuts. Like, you know.
Right.
You know, but, you know, because it's, yeah. So hearing of Loranci's condition and of the similarities between hers and his deceased daughter's symptoms, Asa decided to get involved. He wanted to ensure that this girl would not be sent to the asylum, which was a mistake he had made with his own daughter. The Roffs were among the first to suggest to the Venom family that their daughter could be suffering from possession, or as they put it, an invasion of foreign minds. In fact, it was he who suggested that the Venom family see the spiritualist healer, Dr. E.W. Stevens, in the first place, and it was after he became involved that the spirit of Mary Roff, his deceased daughter, seemed to overtake Laurancie's body. Are you with me? Does this make sense, or am I jumping around?
No, I get it. That's just like so creepy. It almost feels like, I'm like, did they do that? You know?
Yeah, like were they all kind of in on it, but then it's like, why? So just a little bit into the background of Mary Roff. So when she was alive, she lived a chaotic life. Her spells and trances began when she was only an infant. In her trances, she too would become someone else for a short time. And during her possessions, she, like Laurancie, would share information about places she had never been to and people she would have never met or otherwise known about. Mary would later become obsessed with blood, habitually applying leeches to her own forehead. Once, her father found her slicing open her arms with a knife in the kitchen, trying desperately to drain her body of blood. Of course, she passed out.
Shit.
And by that point, Mary had lost a lot of weight. And now, with the loss of blood, she laid in bed in shock. So just a quick background, too, on just the history of medicine and blood. If a lot of people know that, like, leeches are actually still used in medicine. But there used to be this idea that bloodletting was, like, a healthy thing to do. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they'd, like, drain the body of a little bit of blood. It's supposed to, like, get the bad blood out. This goes, like, way, way back to, like, you know, the ancient Greeks believed in, like, different types of, you know, fluids in your body that you just had to get rid of. So that's kind of weird. It's not just completely random that she was trying to slice her arms open, you know? So
I just love that she had ready access to leeches. Like, were they just under the cabinet? Like, how did she?
Yeah, I don't really know. Or maybe there was just a lake nearby, and, you know, who knows? So while she was recovering, they began to do some tests with her because strange abilities seemed to manifest within her during her trances. So she temporarily seemed to lose the sense of sight, feeling, or hearing naturally. Just to make sure, they applied a blindfold to her, and while she was wearing the blindfold, she was able to dress, open and search through drawers, pick up loose pins on the floor, and do pretty much anything as though she were seeing normally. While blindfolded, Mary took an encyclopedia and looked up the entry for, of course, blood, reading the entire entry out loud, most likely creeping everyone the fuck out because she's wearing a blindfold. She would also, while blindfolded, take a box of letters written to her from friends and family and read them out loud to the room. Mr. Roff and the local reverend attempted to trick her and place their own letters in the box just to throw her off, just to see if she was, like, fucking with them. And when she happened upon their letters, she immediately recognized the deception and threw them violently across the room.
Wow.
Mary grew up and developed clairvoyant abilities, regularly speaking to spirits. She would predict future events with unsettling accuracy, which is, I mean, that there's no way you're predicting the future, you know? Mary was sent to an asylum because she's obviously nuts, where she was subjected to water cures in bathtubs, among other treatments. If you don't know, water cures were relatively common practices in asylums at the time, during which a patient would be dunked into either icy or scalding water, you know, to help.
What was the science behind that?
You might be surprised to know that this didn't help that much, usually. As much as you would think that it would. Yeah, it was essentially torture. And this is just one of several different types of torture that asylums have historically put people through. It's fucking super, super sad. One morning at the asylum in July of 1865, Mary Roff woke from a nightmare, screaming uncontrollably before falling back dead at the age of 19 years old.
Oof, that's rough.
Super rough. Following her death, Mary's father became a devout spiritualist. He no longer believed that his daughter had been crazy, but that she was a gifted and misunderstood medium. Eager to perhaps make reparations for how he felt he had failed his daughter, Asa Roth kept a watchful and protective eye on lunacy and shared his story with the Venoms, which, like, my heart breaks for this guy, too. Because, I mean, you know, like, when all the doctors and, like, your reverend, when you're super religious and that's, like, the person you look up to, when all these people are like, yeah, send her to the asylum, and she fucking dies at 19 years old.
I know.
That's so hard. So my heart just goes out to, like, this whole family. And especially because they see Lorancy and they're like, this is what my daughter went through. Don't do what we did. So when the spirit of his daughter, Mary Ruff, takes over fucking Lunacy's body, Lorancy. Lunacy is not her name. And it's actually a really mean typo that I made on accident. Okay, so the spirit of Mary Roth takes over Lorancy's body. She said that she would retain control over the girl's body until her soul was healed. She calmly told Lorancy's parents that Lorancy needed to spend some time with the angels in heaven, and that in the meantime, she would like to spend some time with her own family. So obviously, the parents weren't immediately like, yeah, okay, sure. But they just kind of waited for their daughter to kind of fall out of this trance, but she didn't. So Mary's spirit retained control over Lorancy's body for several days. The girl acted like a stranger to her own friends and family and longingly begged to be with her, quote, own family, referring to the family of Mary Roth. Finally, Mary's mother and sister, Minerva, came to visit, and when they approached Lorancy, she stood up and called out, "Here comes Ma and Nervy." And of course, Nervy had been Minerva's childhood nickname, something Lorancy would have had no way of knowing.
That's nuts.
Nuts. Upon seeing Mary's mother and father, the girl became frantic and begged for the chance to go home with them. The Roth family agreed to take her in until she returned to a normal state of mind again. I imagine for the Roths that they grasped at a chance to spend more time with their deceased daughter. I can't imagine the pain the Venoms family must have felt, feeling as though their own daughter was a stranger to them and longed to spend time with another family entirely, which she claimed to recognize as her own. Finally, and perhaps desperate for a cure and a chance to save their daughter from the asylum, the Venom family agreed to let Lorancy stay with the Roths. So she kind of gets into their, like, buggy and they go to drive home. And this gives me chills. So as they pass the house in which the Roths once lived, Lorancy, as Mary Roth, became frantic, demanding to know why they weren't going home. Unnerved, the Roths explained to the girl that they had moved from that house after Mary died. Still, when they came to the new house, Lorancy gleefully recognized items that had belonged to Mary in life. But just the fact that when Mary Roth was alive, they lived at a certain house, and as they passed it, Lorancy's going, wait, why aren't we going back there? And this family is looking at this stranger going, oh no, Mary, after you died, we moved from that house. But it, like, further confirms. So creepy. So anyway, so then still when they come to this new house, Lorancy gleefully recognized items that had belonged to Mary in life. She remembered events and people from the dead girl's life, and even knew family secrets that Lorancy could not have known. It didn't go into what the family secrets were, but I'm, like, super curious. I wonder if she's like, oh, is Aunt Betty still nuts? Or like what did she say that, I don't know. But one of the most startling things that she did do when she went back home was she went and played songs on the piano, something Mary knew how to do and enjoyed, but Lorancy had no experience of. She seemed to have completely lost all memory or connection to the Venom's family or friends. Larancy continued to live as Mary Roth with the Roth family for an astounding 5 months, only occasionally visiting with friends and family. The Roth family truly believed that they had the spirit of Mary Roth within this girl. During her stay, she supposedly gave proof of clairvoyance, made predictions, and had out-of-body experiences in trance, describing, quote, astral journeys, unquote, before returning to consciousness. When she'd awake, she'd share stories of her experiences in the afterlife. She said that she actually remembered when the Roths had tried to summon her through mediums and even recalled her own burial.
Creepy.
Like, fuck no.
There's one thing you could forget.
yeah, it was notable. She talks about the wounds on her arm when she had cut herself with the knife, and then she touches her arm, which was, of course, Larancy's arm, and says, "This is not the arm. That one is in the ground." What the fuck? Ugh. Like, isn't this scary? But then one day in early May, Mary announced that Larancy's soul would be returning to her body on May 22nd at 11 a.m. Actually, the anniversary is coming up at the time of this recording. As the day drew nearer, she began to show signs of grief. She kissed her family members goodbye, and just as she said, on May 22nd, she announced it was time for her to leave, and with that, she tearfully fell back into a trance and awoke as Larancy Venom. This is after 5 months of staying with the Roth family.
So insane.
Larancy said that she had only felt as though she had been asleep and seemed to be back to her normal self. She returned to the Venom household, and she recognized her friends and family again. I imagine that this was overwhelmingly relieving for her parents, especially after months of her being gone. And this is, I mean, we're all in lockdown and it just got extended another 3 months. This is like, we don't know when this is ending. This is sort of how her family felt. They don't know when their daughter's coming back or if she ever even is, right? That's like what I compared it to. Just that feeling of like, I have no idea when this will end or if it ever will.
I love that the girl that took over their daughter's body only sometimes visited that family. She was like, fuck it. You'll get her back eventually.
Yeah, she was like, you know what? She'll come back. It'll be fine.
I feel like if I was walking around in somebody's body, I'd at least say hello to their mom, you know?
I mean, it's crazy. It's because, wouldn't you? And think about like the people that we love that have died. If you put yourself in the form of like the Roths family, if someone were to say like, "Oh, I'm your dad again," or "I'm your sister again," or "I'm whoever you've lost," and then to prove like, "Hey, remember this," and you're like, "Oh my god," like just
I know,
nuts. So Larancy, after she woke up, she said she had felt as though she had only been asleep. She seemed to be back to her normal self. And after months of her being gone, the Venom family truly believed that the spirit of Mary Roth had healed Larancy's ailments. So it was kind of like a miracle for everyone involved. The Roth family got more time with their daughter. The Larancy girl was healed from her, stomach pains and trances. So Dr. E. Winchester Stevens doesn't appear to have been trying to find any alternative explanation for what was happening that was not supernatural. He wrote, quote, "We are all in search of truth. Let us not be so blinded with prejudice as to be disgusted with its wrappings and fail to find the fair treasure so snugly ensconced within." Of course, there are people who believed it was an elaborate hoax. The Roth and Venom families certainly believed that it was true, and so did other various firsthand witnesses at the time. Among one of the dissenters was psychologist Frank Sargent Hoffman, who did not believe it. He called it a clear case of hysterical impersonation. Of course, you would have to ignore some of the stranger circumstances in this case to go with this theory. like clairvoyance and the weird amount of knowledge and foresight it would take to play the role of someone else's daughter so convincingly for months.
I mean, I would love it if it was just like an elaborate version of Parasite where it was just her living it up in like these former sheriff lawyers, rich people's house. She's like, I just want to use a jacuzzi for 5 months, then I'll go back to my parents.
Right.
Like, that would be some stone cold sociopathy.
If she didn't specifically like point to events and say, oh, remember when I cut my arm?
Yeah.
Or I even remember my burial, and describing to her family in detail the burial that she remembers and it being validated by the family. Like that's what I don't think Lorenzi was at the burial, you know? So I personally believe it. It happened in the 1800s. We can't really ask anyone. But occasionally following this incident, Lorenzi would visit the Roth family for seances and allow Mary to take over to communicate with them even more. So it goes beyond the 5 months. It's like for the rest of her life. She has a bond with this family and lets this girl take over her body every once in a while. 3.5 years after the event, Venom got married to a man named George Billing, had her first child. She claims that during the birth of her first child, Mary Roth once again took over her in trance to protect her from the pains of childbirth, which is fucking awesome. Good for her. Lorenzi lived to be 87 years old and died of natural causes in 1952 after living a full life and having 11 children.
Damn.
Yeah, especially for at that time, like dying in 1952. Think of like 87 years old. That's a good age for now. Like,
I know.
So
the 11 children. That's so many.
But again, this is like during that time when you're just like, most of them are gonna die. Like, really.
True, very true.
Yeah. So the Watseka Wonder, I hope it's actually pronounced Watseka and it's not like Watseka, whatever. The Watseka Wonder became one of the most thoroughly documented paranormal events in American history. It has been studied several times since it happened. In April 1890, Dr. Hodgson from the Society for Psychical Research went to Watseka and interviewed some of the original witnesses, including the Roth family, though Dr. Stevens had since passed away. He reported that he could find no explanation except spiritualistic. This was directly after Dr. Hodgson had just exposed two of the largest spiritualist frauds at the time, earning him the title of the Sherlock Holmes of professional detectives of the supernatural. William James, who is touted as being the father of American psychology, I have a degree in psych, and like that's a name you get every single psych class. William James, like everyone knows who that is. He even included the case in his book, The Principles of Psychology, where he called it, quote, perhaps as extreme a case of possession of the modern sort as one can find, unquote. This story has been shared several times to many fascinated audiences. It was retold in a 1977 novel called Watseka and mentioned on the popular historical horror podcast Lore. A fictionalized play called Before I Wake was produced and staged in 1986 based on the case. It even inspired a documentary in 2009 by the Booth brothers called The Possessed for the Sci-Fi Channel. The Venom House can still be visited today. They offer tours and ghost hunts. Obviously, we can't go because we can't leave our homes. But had this been a normal season of Laughing in the Dark, I would definitely want to check it out.
That is so awesome.
Isn't that nuts? Like, have you ever heard anything like that before?
No, that's fucking crazy. And to like impersonate somebody's daughter, like you have to know so many details to be able to do that.
Yeah. Childhood nicknames of friends and family. That's nuts.
I know. It's like, I am my mother's daughter and she still questions if I'm her daughter sometimes. So to be like a complete stranger.
Oh, yeah.
And like be able to fool someone's parents. You got to know your shit.
It's very weird. And like I didn't really go into the details too much on like the other people that kind of would like briefly possess at least Lorancy that I read about. But a lot of those were confirmed people as well. So like I briefly mentioned a younger man named Willie that seemed to take over her body literally for only like, 25 minutes or something.
Yeah.
But he was also confirmed to be like, he had like recently died and he was kind of like a transient. Like these were all real people. Yeah. Which is, it's crazy. It's nuts. Something I kind of like to ask guests on the show is, do you believe in ghosts or possession?
I mean, I don't think so, but I can't know. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, probably not, but I can't know for
You're
sure.
like agnostic with it. You're kind of like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't think so, but like maybe. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think so, but I will be exceptionally creeped out on a ghost hunting tour. Does that make sense? Like,
okay. Okay, so you're probably glad to do the episode this way instead of me bringing you to a random location.
Yes, I lot less freaked out. A lot less screaming, I would say, it's gonna happen.
Oh my god, but that's so fun. I love it when the comic gets freaked out. There's like, especially like a couple episodes, like the way I just did your episode is how I do all of them, except I would have like printed this out and brought it with me and we'd like physically be there. And comics are always just like, can you finish this so we can get the fuck out of here? Like, I'm freaked out. Like, or, they don't care. It's all different types of reactions, but yeah, it's really interesting. And it's like, even if you don't necessarily believe in the paranormal, some of these experiences just like, how else do you explain something like this? It could be one thing to like, there is a phenomenon where people are like savants, where they can retain like a creepy amount of information, or that you can say, do you know what a savant is?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're basically, if anyone listening doesn't know, it's the type of person where you can just be like, what day of the week was March 13th, 1972? And they'll be like, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Like or whatever. What if that was right? But they'll just know, Or like, tell me what the first line of a paragraph was on page 72 of Catcher in the Rye. And they'll just know. I don't know if there's even 72 pages in that book. But yeah, like they'll just know. And people who
and it's like, I don't know, there's been like proof released by the government of aliens now. It's like, who knows what you can and can't do.
Yeah,
at this point.
I think for savants, I think there is some kind of an explanation for it. Like it's some type of the way that they process information or something like that. There's an explanation. It's not like it's ghosts, like, And so typically with situations like this, especially going back to like the 1800s and before, when things just seem unnatural, the kind of like ignorant, I guess, response to it is that it's paranormal.
Right.
But for this particular case, because I always kind of like to be, like I like to be critical about the way that I think about things and just see like how I really feel and if there's another explanation. But I just don't know how you could bullshit for 5 months being somebody else.
Well, that's the thing, is like both families would have had to have been in on it. And then it's like, why? Like, how bored are you?
Well,
like,
yeah.
Why would you do that?
Why would you? Yeah, what are you getting? Unless you are becoming like rich off of it somehow. But it doesn't seem, I mean, I didn't read anything about like, well, the families were paid this much by, whatever, like royalties for the book or anything like that. It seems like that would have been included. Because it's also so long ago that there's no like political ties to anything anymore. It's the 1800s. Like no one's like protect the Roths. Like, no one cares. But maybe they do. I don't know. But yeah, it just seems like I can't really see a benefit. And I more so would see like if they started to get suspicious that Lorancy was bullshitting them, how offended would you be? If someone's pretending to be your dead daughter And then you're you're like, remember our dog Spot? But there wasn't a dog Spot. And they're just like, oh yeah, I loved Spotty. You'd be like, get the fuck out of my house. Like you're feeding and taking care of a person for 5 months. I don't know.
I'm furious.
I buy it. I have to say, like, I completely buy it. I think it's nuts. Especially that guy, like,
true.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree with you. It seems true. This is like really hard to refute.
It's insane. Well, and there's been other cases of possession. I've never looked into one as intensely as this one because I did an episode on it, which means I researched for like a week and a half and like, did a bunch of reading and writing about it. But, I mean, I've heard that like the movie The Exorcist is based on a real life event. That Reagan was actually a boy, that it was like a real story. And there's been stories of possession for years. Nuts.
Yeah. Terrifying.
It's terrifying, right? But
yeah.
Well, anyway, I wanted to present to you a story from your home state that is very kind of unique and makes your home state special, even though it's a small town you've never heard of. But yeah, the most well-documented possession is from Illinois.
I love it.
You love it. Well, good. I mean, are you going to be thinking about this later on? Do you think it's changed your idea about the paranormal, about possession?
I feel like if I ever go through Watseka, I'm going to look up that house. I'm going to also be terrified. Like, I'll roll up my windows. I know that doesn't stop spirits, but...
What an awesome name for it anyway. The Venom House. Like...
I know.
It's perfect. Yeah, you'll definitely have to look it up. I definitely will too. I'm from Metro Detroit, so I'm not too far away. Might have to take a little trip to the Venom House and go check it out. And it seems too like Mary Roth, her spirit was totally cool with like spiritualism, being contacted by mediums, all that stuff.
I know.
Lorancy seemed like she was cool with it too. Because she like went back and was like, you guys, whenever you want to talk to Mary, like we're homies, so it's fine. So it seems like one of those places that if you believe all of this is true, you should be able to contact these spirits to like bring them back and have them. But then it's like, well, but then wouldn't you hear about that happening? Do
they not do seances and stuff over there?
I think they do, because all I found was that they offer tours and ghost hunts. I didn't really look too much more into it just because we can't go anyway.
Right.
But I wonder if they do, because I feel like after scouring the internet for sources on this, I feel like I would have found at least one that was like, yeah, I went there with my aunt and like Lorancy took over her body. It was fucked up. Like, we had to show her what like a flashlight is. Like she didn't know what electricity was. It was crazy. Like, or I don't know. It just seems like you would, I don't know. It seems like you would hear a story like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I do. I love when names match up with what the thing is, like Venom Household and it being supernatural and like Anthony Weiner being a pervert. Like, I love when that shit, because it makes me feel...
Yeah.
It makes me feel like we're all in a video game. I'm like, this is crazy.
The simulation, sometimes it just, like, it's too obvious. It's just too obvious. God. It does kind of feel like that. I mean, and it's also just, like... I don't know. It's all so wild. I do believe the story. I don't know how it all works. It doesn't seem like you're able to contact these spirits anymore. I also feel like I'd be really suspicious of like whoever was being like, oh yeah, we're the resident medium. Like, okay, whatever. Like, yeah. Oh, Lorancy's here. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't believe it. Unless like someone
Maybe Lorancy is just like, tired of talking to people. Like she's just hanging up supernatural calls. Like I do spam dialers where she's like, again? Like, she probably doesn't want to talk to us at this point.
Yeah. Like she's being asked all the same questions over and over again too. Maybe the spirits just stopped being interested. Like maybe they're like, I don't care anymore. I don't know these people. Like maybe, I don't know. Because that's the other side of it, that it's like, it's not a reason to doubt it that it's not happening anymore. It could just be like, no, we kind of had a good thing going for a little bit, but we're done. Like, we're done. Like, we moved on. I don't know.
Exactly.
But anyway, it's at least something to ponder while you're in lockdown indefinitely. think about what happened to Lurancy and the Watseka Wonder, and check it out too if you're interested, and look into it more, because it's pretty interesting. But it's a little bit, sure. If anything, it's some interesting history from your home state that you've probably never heard of before. So that's kind of fun. You can tell your parents about it.
No, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Well, thank you for doing the show. What are you up to the rest of today?
Just doing some work. Working on some script, doing some punch up on a script, and then nothing. Just staring out a window.
Right, just like the rest of us, man. I mean, well, yeah. So I saw that you were just on. Was it? I was on one of the TV, the OA. Is that what it was?
I was just on Westworld, and then I also had, that was fun. That was fucking awesome.
And then you also had what else?
Oh, I had a late night thing on, A Little Late with Lily Singh.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds
that was like a standard late night set.
It's so cool that like you're still able to work on stuff in lockdown too. Like it sounds like you're working on like scripts and stuff, and that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, luckily that there's still a little bit of work, not a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, because nobody knows when like production's going to start up again anyway, so it's a little nail biting, I think, for everyone. Ooh. Yeah,
hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. I agree. Well, like my job depends on production too. It's on the other side of it, but I'm the same way. I was hoping by May 15th we'd at least start like maybe commercials, like photo shoots, and it's like nope, everyone's still staying home. I'm like, fuck, really? This is Hollywood though. The show must go on. But anyway. All right. Well, hey, thanks for taking some time out of your day to hear a ghost story and humor me a little bit.
For sure. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed learning all about the Watseka Wonder with us. Be sure to find Subhah on Twitter with the handle @Subhah. That's @SUBHAH. You can also find her on Instagram with the handle @Subhah. That's @SUBHAHA. While you're at it, check us out on social media too. You can find us on Instagram with the handle Lit Dark Podcast. That's LITDARK Podcast. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube. Drop us a comment and say hi. We love hearing from you. Special thanks for this episode goes to my producer, Randall Lawrence in Cranival Studios, my graphic designer, Jonathan Cooper in Heck Yeah Studios, Subhah for being such a lovely guest, and of course, all of you for listening. I'll see you next time right here on Laughing in the Dark.
Sources used for Episode 7 of Laughing in the Dark include the Illinois University Library, American Hauntings, Morbidology, Encyclopedia.com, the Occult Museum, Dark Histories Podcast, and Wikipedia.
Laughing in the Dark is brought to you in part by Heck Yeah Studio. Heck Yeah Studio is a creative effort working with people to create meaningful things. At Heck Yeah Studio, they work with clients to turn their ideas or existing brands into real or better versions. Heck Yeah Studio is the place to go for custom illustration for a full range of branding services, like killer logos, great colors and typography, and fun illustrations for pins, signs, prints, shirts, vehicles, posters, or anything you can imagine. At Heck Yeah Studio, they work with love. Their dream client is someone who is passionate about what they do. At Laughing in the Dark, Heck Yeah Studio has designed our logo, all of our merch, and any posters or stickers that we have. I am so proud and lucky to work with such an awesome company, and I could not recommend them higher.